You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
As Cook stands in the pocket, pressure comes, he's hit, dropped! Back at the 10-yard line, he will be sacked. LSU brought the pressure, and Maason Smith eventually brings down the Missouri quarterback.
Chris Blair on the call, LSU Sports Radio Network. Man, how great was that to see Maason Smith finally have a breakout game? We talked about it a bunch last week. You know, what were maybe the biggest differences we could expect to see with this defense with Pete Jenkins coming in, and Brian Kelly made mention of it. He sort of snuck it in his coach's show, but the fact that they were going to a 4-man front was going to be so much more conducive for the talent you had for your front seven to make plays. Listen, if you have really athletic linebackers that can run and edge players, then you want your big guys in the middle to be space eaters, and then you let your athletic guys run and make tackles. But on a defense like this that is struggling so much in the back end, if you can just create havoc with your front seven, that's going to be a better theory and a better approach for this defense. You know, and we saw it. Brian Kelly was asked on Monday, his number 4 Muse, he was asked if maybe they found something defensively in this football game, especially in the second half, where they started to get off the field. Listen to how Brian Kelly answered it.
We feel there's some light there at the end of the tunnel for our defense. We feel like the progress that was made up front is going to be sustainable. We're going to have to make some more progress on the back end of our defense. We've got to go compete for some balls that we think that were out there for us to get. We are going to get better because of the experience that what Weeks is getting at the linebacker position. He's just getting more reps and more time out there. And I think we found a position that we're comfortable with now with Harold Perkins in terms of it doesn't have to change from week to week with a new teaching progression. So I think there's a lot of pieces there that are coming together, and then I think there needs to be continued improvement.
So when he says, look, there's light there at the end of the tunnel, I think that has to be put in context to understand nobody is projecting that this defense is going to be great, but the second half of the game against Missouri, there were encouraging things. You got pressure with your front seven. You were able to get off the field. You were able to make big stops in moments when you needed it. And yes, you've established a spot for Harold Perkins, which clearly you didn't have earlier in this year. Listen, y'all, let's just have a candid conversation now, okay? We've all wondered why Harold Perkins moved inside. Kid wanted to try to be Devin White. I get it. Sometimes in recruiting, and I don't know if this is exactly what happened in recruiting, but sometimes you make promises. I remember Russell Shepard. Russell Shepard came to LSU and wanted to play quarterback. So the staff let him try to be a quarterback. And after a year, it was so abundantly clear that was never going to be what he was. So he essentially wasted a year trying to play quarterback, but they let him do it. And, you know, last year, getting Perkins on the field the way you did was creative, and you had an elite edge rusher already in B.J. Ojulari at the jack spot, so you got a little more creative with Harold because it was a pick your poison with those two guys. Well, Harold wanted to go move inside. He wanted to try to play inside backer. It took one game to realize that wasn't going to work. And with this defense, well, what do? He's a little undersized to be a true jack because when you're that small and you want to neutralize him, you run right at him. Lane Kiffin said this. You just run right at him. Either that or you get creative and run completely away from him and take him out of the play. So they had to find this way to get Harold Perkins in a spot where he's comfortable. And we've mentioned it several times now. He's in this nickel Sam role, so he's in the strong side linebacker and he's the nickel back, but he's athletic enough to turn and cover, and you saw it on the interception. So here was Brian Kelly kind of talking about how they found that stability for Harold Perkins in the position he's in right now.
In our 3-down structure, we were moving them around because we didn't want them inside. So, we had some, different fronts that we were, playing. Now that we're in 4-down, we can really, designate his position as the Sam/nickel and play a little bit of a hybrid with him. His interception, he was really playing a nickel position. We feel like he's athletic enough that he can be on the field, even if we want to play some nickel. When we get into dime, that's when we bring in Ryan Yates and play a little bit more of a dime package. So he just gives us a lot more flexibility. We can do a lot more things with him. I just wish we got to it sooner, but we got to the right front. Now that we're in 4-down, it gives him a lot more stability in terms of what we want to teach and how we want the defense to move forward.
And although the defense is playing poorly, you're still seeing Harold Perkins make impactful plays. For example, against Mississippi State, he had 2 TFLs. He had a sack. He had a pass deflection. Against Arkansas, 6 tackles. 1.5 TFLs. He had the sack. He had 2 forced fumbles. The sack at the end of the half was big because that prevented Arkansas from trying to get points at the end of the half. Against Ole Miss, nobody had a good day, but Perkins had 9 tackles in the game. He had a TFL. Against Missouri, the 3 tackles, the TFL, the 2 passes defended, 1 ball batted. He had the interception as well. He tipped the field goal at the start of the second half. You're seeing him fill up the stat sheet in a lot of different ways, which is, he's got 5.5 TFLs and 2 sacks on the year. We all expected those would be more, through 6 games. But you've steadied and found where Harold Perkins is going to be most impactful now. And hopefully we continue to see him progress in that role, that nickel Sam role here, as the rest of the season goes along in this true 4-man front. Another thing you could see in this 4-man front is more of Deshaun Womack as a 4-3 edge rusher. I know a lot of people want to see him. He's light. He's probably too light to be an every down defensive end because he's not going to help you in run defense. We've talked about that since fall camp. Whenever we were going out to practices and watching them run combo drills and 2-on-1s, like he was getting ragdolled by LSU's offensive line because he's a small guy and he's put on weight. But he's athletic and he can bend the edge and passing down, so you can see more of Deshaun Womack. They're starting to figure out some things. It took half the season for them to start to see it. Now, can you start to replicate it and pile and stack good performances on top of each other? The other thing that I wanted to talk about, because I have been asked about this a bunch, is the officiating. And I know, y'all know my feeling on this. I'm never going to sit here and say that officials cost a team a game, because it's just, in a 60-minute game with 150 plays, there's so much that you control that you can never point to one call. And the best example of that, the worst, is the Nola no call. Like, would the Saints have won that game had the flag come out? Yes. That's not what cost you the game. You even had opportunity in overtime. You got the ball first in overtime. You still lost. Like, that was an egregious error. But there was so much over the course of the game that you could have impacted. They didn't call the face mask at the goal line that they should have against the Saints. That would have given the Rams likely a touchdown, would have put the game out of reach. Anyway, point being, not blaming officiating for anything. What I will say is the officiating Saturday in the LSU-Missouri game was horrendous. And it's one thing if it's a Friday night high school game and you got dudes leaving their jobs, just putting on a zebra shirt and going out and officiating a high school game, and they're just not trained and good at what they do. It's one thing if I'm out on a Sunday watching my nephew play, 7th and 8th grade football, and they're getting dads out of the stands to officiate a game, right? It's another whenever it's the Southeastern Conference. And, a Missouri offensive lineman moving at the line of scrimmage and the flag not coming out is egregious. The play where Jaden Daniels had a touchdown taken off the board because the holding on Kamori and Pimpton was terrible. For the flag to not come out after Jaden was hit, after he was well into the end zone, the play ultimately where he got hurt, for that flag not to come out is egregious. When Jaden scored on LSU's second possession, when his entire body is in the end zone, the entire offense got in the end zone, and to not rule that a touchdown and to not review it is egregious. There were so many heinous misses by this officiating crew. It just shouldn't happen in the Southeastern Conference. I've said it for years. There should be accountability. Officials should have to speak after a game to be held accountable because they are part of the game. And I can understand Brian Kelly's frustration when he talked about it earlier today.
We've sent in the ones that we have concerns over. It just seems that it's hard for us to see how those, are missed. But maybe the officials look at me and say, how can you not, stop outside zone? So I mean, maybe they look at the same way. I don't know. So maybe I got to put myself in their shoes. But you would think you could see a guy that's right in front of you moving, but I guess not.
Sitting in the room, he was miffed, and he was trying to tap dance and not get himself in trouble. But you can understand his frustration. There are going to be judgment calls that are missed, bang, bang, in the moment of live action at this speed. The amount of calls missed and key calls and the egregious nature of it is very hard to stomach. That crew should be reprimanded because they were atrocious. They were absolutely atrocious on Saturday. Thankfully, it didn't cost LSU a game. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.